So in this video we're going to be looking at normalizing a database to third normal form. So in order to make sure that your database will be in third normal form once you've imported your files, your .csv files, and then formed your relationships, we have to make sure that these four conditions have been obeyed. So to normalize your database to third normal form, we have to make sure that related data is moved into its own table or .csv file. We have to make sure that each file or table has a primary key. We need to make sure there are no duplicates in the primary key, and all fields must be dependent on the primary key only. So a field cannot be dependent on a primary key and another field. So the question we're going to be looking at is question 9. It says examine the data in the files, N18 airports, N18 cabin crew, N18 crew code, N18 flights. It says Etwara have decided that all field names must be short, meaningful, consistent in style, and contain no spaces. And we're asked to create a relational database normalized to third normal form using this data. So we have to open up these .csv files, which are open up in Excel, and we've got to make sure that we go through these 4 steps to make sure that our database will be in third normal form once we import those tables into Access that form the relationships. So we've been given the files, the 4 files. So let's start with airports at the top. So once you open up N18 airports, you'll see that there's flight number, arrival airport code, and airport name. So we have to go through these steps to make sure that this file is as we need it to be. So any information that's related must be in its own table, and each table must have a primary key. So looking at the information over here, you can see that flight number, the data in this column looks like a code, so we are going to assume that this flight number field is going to be our primary key. So if we set this as the primary key, that means that both of these fields must only be dependent on this flight number. In other words, if you wanted to find out what is the arrival airport code for this flight over here, if you know the flight number, you can easily get the arrival airport code for that flight. In the same way, you can get the airport name for this flight number as well. So knowing the flight number, you can get the information for both of these columns. The problem is when you look at these 2 columns over here, not only can you get the airport name from the flight number, you can also find out what the airport name is if you know what the airport code is. So airport name is dependent on both the flight number, and it's also dependent on the arrival airport code. So when you normalize in your files to 3NF form, you cannot have a field dependent on more than one field. It has to be dependent only on the primary key. So that would be the 4th step over here. And also the airport name and arrival airport code, this information is related. So what we're actually going to do here is, according to step 1, move it to its own table. So you can highlight both of these columns, right click, and we're going to select copy, and then we're going to open up a new Excel file. So file, new, blank workbook, and I'm just going to paste that information in this file. So that is step 1 complete. We've moved related data to its own table. So the table that we're working in here now, this is going to be its own file that we're going to import into Access. So now we need to make sure that in this file, step 2, 3, and 4 is fulfilled. So each table must have a primary key. So in this file now, arrival airport code, the data in this column looks like a code, so we can make this the primary key. But it says there must be no duplicates in the primary key. So you can see there's DUB and Dublin, Ireland. You can see that there are duplicates here in this file. So what we're going to do is remove these duplicates. And just out of curiosity, if you wanted to have a look if this primary key here did have duplicates in it, you would just click on this column, you would go to conditional formatting, highlight cells, and duplicate values. And you can click OK. Anything that has a duplicate in the column will go red. For example, you can see the color has changed. So it's picking up that DUB appears again in the column. As you can see, the two values below are also DUB. So there are duplicates in this column. So I'm just going to undo it. So Control Z. So to remove duplicates, I'm going to highlight this information. And under Data, you can see more or less on the right side, there's going to be a little button that you can press to remove duplicates. If you hover over it, it should say Remove Duplicates. I'm going to click on it. And then here we can select the column we want to remove the duplicates from. So we don't want any duplicates in the primary key. So I'm just going to only make sure that column A is selected. And click OK. And OK again. And you can see all the duplicates have been removed. So now we're going to have a look at the steps again to make sure this file is in 3NF form. So we have moved related data to its own table. We have decided that the arrival airport code is the primary key. We've removed duplicates from the primary key, and all fields must be dependent on the primary key only. So airport name, which is the only other field besides the primary key, this field is only dependent on the primary key. And just before we close this file, in the question it says Airtoara decided all field names must be short, meaningful, consistent in style, and contain no spaces. So these field names over here, we want to remove any spaces and make sure they're short and meaningful. So instead of having a space, we're going to put an underscore in its place. And airport name, we're going to put underscore in place of the space. So now this file satisfies the conditions for 3NF. So I'm going to go File, Save As, Browse, and I'm probably going to save this file as airports. And in order for this file to be imported into Access, it has to be saved as a .csv file. So it can't be a workbook. It's got to be a comma delimited file. So select this. So all of the other original files will still be here. I'm just going to save it. So this file is in 3NF form, so we can close it completely and move on to the next file. So going back to this file that we copied column B and C from, because we now have the airport name and arrival airport code together in the other file, we no longer need this airport name, which was causing the problem because it was dependent on the flight number and arrival airport code. We can now remove this information from this file. So in this file now, we only have the flight number and arrival airport code. So this file here, we've decided that the flight number is going to be the primary key. So to check that there are no duplicates, you can go to conditional formatting, highlight cells, duplicates. So okay, and you can see that there are no duplicates, nothing's in red. So I'm just going to remove the conditional formatting by doing Control Z. So this is a primary key, there are no duplicates, and arrival airport code is only dependent on flight number. So this file over here is now in 3NF form, and just like in the previous file, we've got to make sure that the field names must be short, meaningful, consistent in style, and contain no spaces. So wherever you see space, just going to put an underscore in its place. Arrival airport code, underscore in its place. And now we can save this file as a .csv file. So file at the top, save as, browse. Make sure it's a .csv file, and maybe you're going to save this as codes. And hit save. Because pretty much this file has the airport codes for the flight numbers. So you can close this file, it's in 3NF form.